So here I am again to talk about my least favorite subject, Christian fundamentalism. I talked to Mary and she suggested that I take time in front of the camera to get used to talking to you and just get familiar with talking to the camera. So here goes. I'm going to tell you my story, how I escaped Christian fundamentalism. For as long as I could remember, my parents always appreciated the teachings of Michael and Debbie Pearl. And the Pearls are very much all for spanking. Now, spanking is a completely different subject, and I don't think that it's something to get torn about whether you spank your kids or not. But I'm not just talking about spanking, like taking your child aside and giving them a few swats on the bottom to correct them for something wrong. I'm talking about a kind of spanking that is actually beating, but it hides in the name of spanking because spanking sounds okay to parents. My parents would take a blanket and put it down on the floor and put my toddlers or infant brother or sister on it. And if my sibling crawled off the blanket, they would pick them up and spank them very hard and put them back on the blanket until the child learned to stay on the blanket. And when the child was a little bit older, they did it with a chair. Another thing that the Pearls taught was to take a piece of plumbing, a thin piece of plumbing, and carry it around and hit your child whenever they don't listen to you or don't obey fast enough or don't do a job well enough for you. These are very dangerous ideas for training children. The idea of breaking the child's will is detrimental to people. It's not biblical at all. So anyway, those were ideas that I was raised with. But I didn't see these ideas as wrong at all. I grew up in them, they seemed normal to me, and I thought every family did these things. So I graduated from high school thinking that I was going to be a midwife. I really wanted to be. My grandma was a midwife, and I thought that that would be an excellent practice for me to get into. I apprenticed with my grandma for the last few years of my high school, and so it seemed that that was the path I was going to go down. But things didn't work out for me. I wasn't able to have a car to go where I needed to go, and other details that just weren't realistic for me, the oldest daughter in a large family. I was expected to do a lot of the chores around the house, and practically raise my siblings. My dad made it sound like he wanted me to get a job, but whenever I had an application ready to submit, he was always the barrier that wouldn't let me do it. With the nursing home job, the only position that they offered me was third shift, and my mom and dad told me I was not allowed to work third shift. With the Dollar General store, I brought my application to my dad because I didn't know my social, and it required my social. And he told me, you should never put your social on anything. So this isn't a good job for you. Don't apply for this job. So that's what stopped me there. And then so I felt stuck, very stuck. And besides that, if I got a job that was too far away, Dad wouldn't be able to drive me to it, and I wasn't allowed to just take a car. There were very few times that I got permission to just take a car. Some of those are sort of interesting, weird stories. Thinking back, it's amazing how trapped and just captive I was and didn't even realize it. I had started chatting online with a homeschool Christian mom who was the mother of a large family as well. I had a crush on her son, and she was talking to me and realized that I was very stuck in life, and she wanted to help me. And so she encouraged me to apply for jobs. But then when nothing worked out, she had heard of an idea called a pairing. Pretty much a nanny, a little bit different than a nanny, but I would be able to travel overseas. The family would pay for my travels with them, and pay for my food and shelter, as well as an income. She thought this would be a perfect opportunity for me to travel and experience the world, and I was really excited to hear about it. She said, talk to your dad about it and see if he'll let you do this. So the next morning, I was really excited to talk to my dad about it. But I was nervous too, so nervous, because I knew he was going to have a problem with it. There was no way he was going to let his daughter leave the house without his protection. I went to my dad and I told him, I have heard about this amazing thing called a pairing overseas, and I'm really interested in doing it. Would you look into it with me? And my dad said, no. And he gave me 3 reasons. Well, actually, first he laughed in my face. He laughed in my face because he thought I was joking. And then when he saw I was serious, he gave me 3 reasons. And I always loved that about my dad. He always gave me reasons. My mom never gave me reasons. She's another story. Anyway, my dad always gave me reasons. And I appreciated that. He said his reasons were that he didn't believe that parents should put their children in the responsibility of someone else who wasn't in the family. Or he just said that he didn't believe that there should be such things as nannies or au pairs or babysitters even. He thought that parents should take responsibility for their kids. And that's the idea that made us so isolated, really, because my parents wanted to be the only ones to teach us. So that was his first reason, that he didn't believe in au pairs and nannies. He didn't think that they were right or biblical. The verse that they like to use is the verse, you should teach your children while you walk in the way, when you rise up, when you lie down. It's Deuteronomy something. I don't even remember the reference very well. Anyway, so then his second reason was he couldn't protect me. If I was overseas with a family that he didn't know and he wasn't able to talk to face, he didn't know that I would be safe, so he couldn't protect me. Now, protection in fundamentalist groups is another word for control. They pretty much equal the same thing and they mash together, and there's no really line as to what's the difference between protection and control. So pretty much he wouldn't be able to control me. Thirdly, he said that his vision for me was not to go over and be an au pair. He wanted me to help him take care of his family. And that, to me, later, as I thought about it after talking to my dad, I realized was a contradiction of his first reason. His first reason was that he didn't believe that other people besides the parents should be teaching their children. And then he was telling me that I needed to raise his kids for him. So those were my reasons given to me. And I thought them over, and I prayed about them, and I talked to my friend, the mother, the homeschool mom, and I realized that they weren't good enough reasons for me to not look into it and pursue it. So I went back to my dad again and I said, this is what I want to do. I am very interested in this. Will you please look into it with me? And he said no again. So I felt defeated. I asked him if he would give me my legal documents so that I would be able to get my passport for myself and make my own decisions. And he told me no. He told me that I had a rebellious heart and I needed to repent to God. And if he didn't tell me that what I wanted was what God wanted, then it wasn't what God wanted for me. And that's a fundamentalist idea that's very dangerous as well. Jennifer encouraged me to go to my dad one more time, a third time, to ask him for my legal documents. So I did. I was in the car driving home with him, and I asked him. And he went on a very long rant about how rebellious I was, how stubborn I was, and how God needed to change my heart. And if God didn't, God would punish me for my rebellious spirit. I was terrified. I was afraid that I would get on the plane and it would crash, just like what happened to Jonah. That was my biggest fear. In order to help you keep the Jennifers in my story straight, I'm going to tell you there's the world traveler Jennifer, there's the Texas Jennifer, and there's the homeschool mom Jennifer. And they're all homeschool moms, but that'll help when I refer to one of them, that's what I'll refer to them as. So the world traveler Jennifer talked to me on the phone. And while she was on the phone with me, I heard my mom's footsteps on the stairs. And I got really scared. And I hung up on Jennifer. Now, this was a video chat with Jennifer, and I was I was nervous because Jennifer had dyed hair, she wore makeup. Two things that I had been taught were not good girl things to do. Plus, her hair was short. And at the time, I wasn't allowed to really cut my hair short, and that was seen as a worldly thing. So, so I was scared of Jennifer, honestly, and I was nervous. And then I heard my mom coming up the stairs, and I got even more scared, and I hung up on Jennifer because I was afraid my mom would find out that I was talking to a stranger. And after my mom went away, I called Jennifer back, and I said, I'm sorry, I was so scared. And I realized in that moment that I was more scared of my mom because of her abuse than I was of the stranger, and I was willing to call the stranger back and seek for her help. And I was scared to tell my mom anything of what I was doing here. And I was an adult. At that point, I was almost 20. So we were considering how to get me to Texas. And it was an ordeal because I wasn't allowed to just take my dad's car. Some of the Jennifers thought that if I just took my dad's car, it would serve him right for not giving my legal documents, which were actually mine, and he was holding them from me. But I decided that it was enough of a concern that I would get blamed for stealing my dad's car that I needed more help. So I contacted my best friend Alina, and she suggested that she could drive me to the airport. She would make it happen. And I was so relieved. We had the Jennifers had set up for me like an escape. So if my dad found out that I was leaving, found my bags or anything like that, they would drive down and personally help me leave. But thankfully that wasn't necessary. I was terrified about driving myself to the airport. I was so glad it worked out for Alina to take me. I had never driven on highways alone before, and I was terrified to do it. But thankfully, Alina, so the plan was, I was going to my grandparents every Tuesday and Thursday to study midwifery with my grandma. And so we planned that Alina would come and pick me up from my grandparents, and we'd tell my grandparents that I was going out for lunch with her, which was true. And then a wrench got thrown in our plan. Rebecca my sister, was going to take her driver's license test. And so Dad needed to take her there to the BMV, but before going to work, I would drop my dad off at work and then take Rebecca to my grandparents with me. Thankfully, it all worked out, and it didn't mess up our plans too much. But I got to my grandparents' house, and I told my grandpa, I'm going out for lunch with Alina. I'll be back. Well, I didn't say I would be back, actually. I did not lie to him at all. I got in the car and with my backpack. I always took my backpack everywhere, and it always had my midwifery books. But on this day, it had my clothes and my getaway stuff. The very special stuff that I could not leave behind. And Alina drove me to the airport, and she said goodbye to me there. And after I passed through security, it was officially my very first time, besides being lost somewhere, that I was alone in public by myself. And I was nervous. I was very nervous. I sat there waiting for the plane and texting the Jennifers, and I told them this is the first time I'm alone in public, and they were rather shocked. I got on the plane, and I was seated next to a middle-aged lady, and I told her a little bit of my story before we took off. I told her I'm running away from home. I'm leaving. I'm 20, almost 20, and I'm leaving. And I told her the situation. My parents didn't want me to do anything I wanted to do except their plan, which was marry me to someone who they chose. And I've decided that that's not the life I want to live. She was shocked. I told her that I was going to stay with people in Texas who I had never met before, and she was even more shocked. She said, "You haven't even met these people before? Don't you know how dangerous this is?" And I said, "Yeah, but I have connections, and I'm pretty certain of them." And she was like, "I'll buy you a plane ticket back." She was very worried about me. for the rest of the plane trip. I could tell she was very worried about me. And we got to the airport, and she made sure that I got to the people I was supposed to be with safely. So I got to meet my Texas mom, Jennifer. She was amazing, and I got to meet her daughter Kara. They both met me at the airport, as well as the grandmother. And that was it was interesting. I was really tired, I remember, and they drove me all around Dallas in the dark at night, and I remember glimpses of it because I was so tired. They took me to a bookstore, I remember. They took me out to eat. That's pretty much all I remember. Long before I left for Texas, I had written up an email to my dad and had it approved by the Gens. The letter told my dad exactly why I was leaving and told him that I didn't have any hard feelings. I was an adult, and I hoped that he would be able to respect me for that, and that I loved him very much and thanked him for how he had raised me to be a good, strong woman. My dad didn't respond very well to that email, and to follow, there was this agreement in which he told me that I was rebellious. He used some Bible verses that were twisted, and the Gens pointed out to me at the time how twisted they were, but I was in such shock from leaving home that I remember hearing their arguments and not really understanding it, repeating a lot of their words but not really understanding why and what I was saying. Jen had a conversation with my parents' pastor, and he told her, "You haven't heard both sides of the story. You can't say you're taking Sarah's side when you haven't heard both sides of the story." And Jen told him, "It's enough for me that she was held captive labor and her dad wouldn't give her her legal documents. She is an adult. She should at least be able to make her own decisions." And like that, when she told me what she had told the pastor, the wording she had used, that was the one thing that made sense to me and that I was able to cling to at the time, as but I was still running. I was still terrified that I was in the wrong, that the plane was going to crash and I was going to be like Jonah, and everyone would say, "Well, that's what happens when you run away from your parents and God." I wasn't really running from God, though. I wanted to really know what was truth. And yeah, a lot of amazing things happened in Texas, and I ended up getting to see a lot of historical places and travel around Texas quite a bit with Jen. She made sure that I saw everything, and that was really amazing. I don't think that I was what the Floods were expecting as far as a new sister. They call me their sister. And they were my siblings too. And they certainly were not what I was expecting. I was very, very quiet, and they were very, very loud. In fact, I think I surprised myself with how quiet I was in Texas. I guess when I was at home, I imagined myself getting out with a yell and a hoot. But I ended up being the mouse of the family among the Floods. They were all very loud, and I just absorbed everything. But that's kind of where I was. On the inside, I was running still. I was scared, and I was running. And on the outside, I was absorbing everything. Shortly after I got to Texas, I got a package in the mail. The package was from the world traveler Jen. I had told her of my dream to have a yellow dress, that I always wanted a yellow dress, and yellow was not allowed in my family. We weren't allowed to wear yellow because it was too bright and seen as immodest. If you wore something yellow, it would draw everyone's attention to you. So we were supposed to avoid yellow at all costs in our clothing choices. So Jen bought me a yellow dress. It was beautiful. I loved it. It had a sweetheart neckline, which was something I always wanted and wasn't allowed to have. And it was the best gift anyone had ever given me up to that point, and it thrilled me so much, and it still does. I still own that dress. Sometime maybe I'll do a video in it so you can see it. It was my freedom dress. So when you check out my blog is spuninayellowdress.wordpress.com, and that is the story of my yellow dress. Texas Jennifer told me that she had been able to get me into the homeschool prom that her daughters were going to. And I remember I wasn't really thrilled to hear that. I'd never been to a prom, and I had ideas about what proms were, and I was not excited. But she assured me that I was going to enjoy it. So as my time in Texas drew closer to an end, I was told to get ready for this prom. They took me dress shopping, and like I said, I wasn't thrilled. I was expecting that they would have to pick out a dress for me and stuff like that. But I started trying on dresses, and I appreciated the colors of the dresses so much that I wanted to try on a dress of each color. So I got a picture taken in a dress of each color, and eventually I picked a light pink one. And my thought behind picking that one was that when I was younger, I always wanted a pink dress because I thought that that was what princesses wore. And that memory kind of stuck with me, and I decided I was going to fulfill that dream, that childhood dream, that the child who I was deserved to have her dream fulfilled. So I picked the pink one, and I have never regretted that. The prom was amazing. The theme was France, and it was spectacular. I got to dance for the very first time a waltz. I'd never danced a waltz before, and I learned. It was so much fun. Besides that, I didn't dance really. I'm a quieter person, so I just sat at the table and watched everyone else dance and enjoyed the food and walking around in the Paris that they had set up there. I came out from the prom, and my friend Alina was there waiting for me. She had flown from Ohio to see me, and her and Jen had set up the surprise for me, and I was so surprised. And Jen caught it on camera, how surprised I was. I got on the plane to go to Malaysia, and I was seated next to a Korean lady, and well, there were some layovers, but eventually I was seated next to a Korean lady named Sunny, and she was amazing. We didn't talk a whole lot at first, but then there was some huge storms as we got closer to Penang, and we had to land in Tokyo. And so we stayed in Tokyo Airport, and it was lots of fun. Tokyo is very colorful, very loud and colorful, and I really enjoyed it. At the time, at first I was really stressed out because I was missing flights and I wasn't sure what was going on. I was scared, but Sunny really helped me get through. It ended up she was a Christian, and she was thrilled to find out that I was a Christian. And her friends, her other Korean ladies on the plane, had such an interesting perspective of America. They thought America was like amazing, like really, really great country, and all Christian. She seemed to think that everyone in the U.S. is Christian, and that kind of made me laugh. But I didn't know like how to communicate to her that her expectations of America aren't what she thinks they are. So we spent the night in Tokyo Airport, took turns sleeping and stuff, and ate dinner there. And later on, I read a book on Tokyo, or Japanese culture, and I realized that we had done a lot of really rude things in the airport. For instance, you're not supposed to blow your nose in public. Well, I didn't know that, and I had a little bit of a cold, so I'm positive I blew my nose in public. Another thing is that you're not supposed to tip, and Sunny and I made sure that we tipped at the restaurant. And another thing is we left, if you aren't supposed to like ask for carry-outs, like that's after eating in a restaurant, that's rude. And we did that. We asked for carry-outs, and they said no, they couldn't do that for us. And so we left a lot of food on our plates, which was another bad thing. We had ordered way too much, and we knew that. We had been given vouchers, and so we knew we weren't going to use them all anyway, so we were going to just buy a little bit of everything, pretty much was kind of the idea. And it was a lot of interesting food. Whole fish that I'd never eaten before. We had to pick it off the boat. Shortly after I got to Malaysia, I was contacted by my uncle, Lem, in Alaska. And he wanted to make sure that I was alright. He was very disappointed with how my family had treated me. And and wanted to help me if there was any way. And my parents had refused to talk to Sarah Weber at all. So I asked him if he would talk to Sarah Weber, and Sarah Weber wanted to talk to him too. She wanted to talk to a family member who wanted to care about me and my choices. And so my uncle did that, and that was really helpful. It gave him a perspective so that he was able to understand where I was at and stuff like that. And then, so I spent 4 months as an au pair in Malaysia, and then I went to Alaska to be with my uncle, and I got a job in Alaska. I had several jobs. I worked at a theater, and then I got a Senate page job, so I was working with the senators, and I met some amazing people, people who I would call second families and third families up in Alaska, and I made Juneau my home. I loved Juneau, and I wish I could go back. Maybe someday I will. I really hope I do. I loved how snug the mountains were all around, and even the winter wasn't so bad. I normally hate winter. I hate cold. I love warm weather, but I love Juneau. My friend Alina got engaged while I was in Alaska, and I decided to travel back for her wedding because she asked me to be in it, and I was thrilled to be in it. And so I ended up back in Ohio, and I wasn't sure what exactly I was supposed to do. I got my driver's license again in Ohio, and I did a phlebotomy class, hoping that I would be able to do phlebotomy. And I ended up loving phlebotomy. I didn't think I would like dealing with needles, but I ended up really loving phlebotomy. But it didn't work out for me because I wasn't able to get a job in it. And then Alina's brother Nathan told me about Hesba House, which is abusive boarding school. It's Christian fundamentalism, run by Ron Williams. And I was touched by it because it sounded a lot like my story. Like, the girls there were treated in ways that were similar to ideas that my parents had used on us, and me and my siblings. So I decided that I was pretty sure Indiana was where I was supposed to be. And so that's how I ended up here. I was living with Nathan and, for a little while, and then I got my apartment, and I call it Chapter 37. So that's where I am now. Chapter 37. So while I was with the family that I was appearing for, something interesting happened. We were at the airport, McDonald's. I was taking care of the twins, and we witnessed a father drag his son into the men's bathroom. Drag him by his arm into the men's bathroom. We heard the father hit the child many times, and the child came out sobbing so hard he couldn't breathe. He was gasping like that all the time between sobs. And Sarah Weber turned to me and she said, "What we just saw was abuse. That was horrible." And I was really shocked to hear that, and I said, "My parents did that to me all the time." Like, that wasn't a big deal to me. That's something I saw daily at my parents' place. And Sarah Weber was shocked, just as shocked as to hear that as I was to hear her say that it was abuse. And she said, "We're going to need to talk about this more." And so over the next few weeks, and even months until I left, we talked about abuse. And I had noticed that the way she wanted her children looked after was very different from my parents' restrictions and stuff. Sarah Weber didn't want me to spank, or spanking hit anything that would cause the child pain at all. And at the time, I was very a little resentful with those thinkings, because I believed that children were rebellious and sinful, and they needed that spanked out of them. Because, like I said, I didn't see it as abuse. That I didn't leave home because of abuse. I left home because I was an adult. But I gradually came to see it as abuse, and it gave me a completely different view of children. And I am so thankful for what I was taught by Sarah as far as children goes, because now I am able to regain insight on children and even my life, looking back at my life and seeing it in a new light. I wish everyone could have that experience of seeing two different ways of dealing with children. One that's absolutely horrible, and then like realizing how good it can be when you aren't looking to break your child's will and instead are treating your child as an individual and as a human being, not like an animal. And I'm very thankful for that experience. So back in April, when I was here in Indiana, my mom called me and told me that my dad had been in a car accident and died. I was very shocked by the news. It was very sudden. I went to Ohio for the funeral, and I sat down with my mom before the funeral, hoping that something would have changed. But I was very disappointed and disturbed that nothing had changed. She told me to my face that my side of the story was worthless, that I don't remember things correctly, that I never asked my dad for my legal documents, that I had been deceitful and run away from her. I was horrified, and I cried very, very hard after that. I walked away from that meeting, and she had won. She'd won, and I was defeated. It was very, very frustrating. I recovered from that, and decided that I couldn't face my mom alone ever again. That was very dumb of me to do. I came to realize that she is a narcissist and really incapable of loving her children, which is scary. Fundamentalists hide behind their narcissism, behind their beliefs. And it's easy for them to do because fundamentalism encourages their mindset. I was able to visit with my siblings for the first time since I left home after my dad's funeral, and it was really hard. My sister Sienna asked me, or she told me that I had run away because I was angry with Dad, and I told her no, I ran away because I needed to grow up. I needed to be myself. And she's only 4 years old now and doesn't really understand. She told me, well, that's what Mommy told me. And it really broke my heart that my younger siblings think that I'm a rebellious person who just hates my dad. I never hated my dad. I love my dad, and I respected my dad for many things. He truly believed what he believed, and he was going to stand by it, even if it meant casting off his oldest daughter. Like that takes a lot of commitment to what you believe, and I respect him for that. I really do. There was so much about my dad that I miss, and I love my dad. And I wish that he wasn't gone now. Even though I knew when I left home that there was a good chance I would never see my dad again, there was a hope. There was a hope that maybe he would change his mind. Maybe he would be reasonable and listen to me someday. So that's my story. I hope you join me again another day when I do another video. I'll probably be taking thoughts and material from my blog, which is spuninayellowdress.wordpress.com, and I'll put it in the description of this YouTube video so you can find it easily. So I hope you join me for those. Until then, bye!